1996, the world was first introduced to Pokémon. The games were insanely successful, and the franchise was considered a worldwide phenomenon. Things were going great, but one thing was obviously in the back of Game Freak's minds, and that was that a sequel had to be made. So in 1999, Pokemon Gold and Silver were released, and in this video, we will see how these games achieved the impossible by being a perfect sequel. Hey everyone, Midits here. Today I wanted to start sort of a spiritual successor to a series I did before, that being the Pokemon animated show's ranking series. But instead, we'll be talking about the Pokemon games, and some more things will be different. I'm not going to be ranking the games, and I'm also not going to be doing them in any particular order. That's mainly because I haven't played every Pokemon game, and with quite a few of them, I don't remember everything that happened. So I just wanted to make these videos talking about the Pokemon games of the series that I've played, which have interested me the most. Since Gold and Silver are my favorite games in the series, only being tied with one other game, I decided that this was a great starting point. So let's talk about Pokemon Gold and Silver. I want to first talk about the various improvements that this game adds. If you've ever played the original Gen 1 games, you would know that they're an insanely glitchy mess. It's honestly part of the charm of that generation, but it's great that many bugs were fixed in Gen 2. There are honestly so many glitches in Gen 1 that I won't even dare go into detail about every single one in this video. But Gen 2 is just way smoother thanks to Game Freak having more experience working with these games. There's also just a ton more detail in this game compared to the first generation, thanks to them being made for the Game Boy Color, and tons of mechanics that become integral to Pokemon are introduced here. Just to name a few, there's breeding, held items, and backwards compatibility with previous games, just to name a few. 100 new Pokemon were added in this generation. Nowadays, that would seem pretty small, but back then, it was basically making the Pokedex 2/3 larger, especially since all of the Pokemon from Gen 1 were available in this game. Not only that, but 2 new Pokemon types were introduced in Johto as well, that being the Dark and Steel type. One thing that I really like here is that there are a couple Pokemon from Gen 1 who gained a new type thanks to the new types added in this game. For example, Magnemite, which was originally an electric type, in this game is now an electric and steel type, and it stays that way for the rest of the series. These games feel really intertwined with the first generation, especially since they gave new evolutions and baby forms to Gen 1 Pokemon. There's so many here that I feel like you'd spend too much time if I talked about each one. That's how large it is. And lastly, the post game here is a ginormous upgrade compared to the first, but we'll go into more detail about that later. I want to talk about the story a little bit here. Red and Blue's story is super iconic, but this one is equally just as great. The decision for this game to take place 3 years after the original is just genius, and I love noticing all the small changes that have happened over that period. Since these first two games are so connected, it made perfect sense to continue having Team Rocket as the main villains. The story here is that Team Rocket is causing as much mayhem as they can, hoping Giovanni will notice them and rejoin Team Rocket. Despite Giovanni being gone, Team Rocket still feels really menacing here. Their schemes are just as, if not more serious than the events of Red and Blue. I also adore that during the storyline, you get the chance to meet Lance the champion before facing him at the end of the game. The Elite Four in this game are great. You have entirely new people in Karen and Will. Bruno and Lance return from the previous Elite Four, and interestingly enough, Koga, one of the gym leaders from the first game, joins the Elite Four. It's a solid group of brand new faces and people we met in the first game. And wow, I honestly can't believe I haven't talked about Silver yet. There's a lot of tough competition, but Silver is easily a contender for the best rival in the whole franchise. Unfriendly rivals are easily some of the best of the series, and Silver takes that to an 11. A little bit after the first time we meet him, we learn that he stole his starter from the professor's lab. And we just see time and time again across the game that he is just not that great of a person. But across the game, each time we battle him, he slowly becomes better and better, even though he is still very serious. And I'll just say this, one of the best things in the whole series is that in the remake Heart Gold and Soul Silver, it is confirmed that Silver is the son of Giovanni. And this was even teased back in Fire Red and Leaf Green. I love how that gives a perfect explanation for why Silver is the way that he is, and why he shows so much disdain for Team Rocket. Silver is easily one of the best written characters in the series. I want to go into detail with the Pokemon in this game. I'm going to be completely honest, this isn't the greatest generation regarding Pokemon, but it's definitely not bad though. The Pokemon here aren't terrible, but it feels like they sometimes get overshadowed by the Gen 1 Pokemon, especially due to the large amount of them that get new evolutions. And another problem is that, despite the decent focus on Gen 1 Pokemon, a lot of them you can't get until a lot later on in the game, so in some cases, it feels like you don't have tons of options for your team. To be honest, I never had that issue, since on my first playthrough, I kinda just played the entire game with Typhlosion and HM Pokemon. There are really great standouts in this generation though. All the starters are fantastic, each legendary and mythical in this game is great. I really love how they give the legendary tree in this game, the legendary beasts, way more story compared to legendary birds. Tyranitar is an incredible Zoodle legendary, definitely being on a similar level to Dragonite. Now I talk about some random Pokemon that I find in the additions, one of which is Ampharos, easily the best Electro type option in this game. Unknown is completely useless, but the mystery behind this Pokemon is really intriguing. Wobbuffet and Smeargle both have really clever gimmicks, the likes of which we'd never really seen before. And lastly, a bug and fighting type Pokemon would probably be considered very odd, but Heracross is easily my favorite non-starter Pokemon this generation. And honestly, I feel like the focus being put on Gen 1 works, because as I've been saying throughout the video, it makes these two games feel intertwined in a way that's rarely seen in the series. Speaking of which, I've been ignoring the reason that this is, in my opinion, the best Pokemon game, and that's due to the fact that it has the greatest post-game of all time. After you defeat the Johto champion, you're given the ability to return to the Kanto region from Red and Blue. And as I mentioned before, tons of things are different. You get to meet characters from the first game who've changed just as much as Kanto itself, and you get to battle all the Kanto gym leaders who now have new teams. Some notable stuff here is that Koga's daughter, Janine, is now the Fuchsia gym leader. Cinnabar Island got completely destroyed by a volcanic eruption, leading Blaine to moving the gym to the Seafoam Islands. A really big thing is that now since Giovanni's gone, Blue takes his place as the Viridian City gym leader. And one thing that I find really neat is that Blue's team consists of his team in Red and Blue, but he doesn't have a starter, instead having his starter replacements. And now let me explain what I mean by that. If Blue didn't pick Venusaur, he would have Exeggutor. If Blue didn't pick Blastoise, he had Gyarados. And if Blue didn't pick Charizard, he would have Arcanine, back in Red and Blue. But instead here, he just has those three and no starter, for a reason we're about to learn about very soon. All of this isn't even the best part about the post-game, because if you get all 16 gym badges and then reach the top of Mount Silver, Red, the main character of the first game, would be there and the two of you would fight. This is arguably the best battle in the entire series, with the only matchup truly rivaling it being the fight against Cynthia at the end of Diamond and Pearl. Red truly feels like a powerhouse here. His lowest level Pokemon is nearly 20 levels higher than Blue's highest, and Blue is, for most people, the person they just last fought. I love how each of Red's Pokemon here makes complete sense. If we followed Red's journey as if it was along the lines of Pokemon Yellow, Red would have encountered Pikachu and Snorlax during his journey, as it's mandatory to beat the game, and the other Pokemon here are gift Pokemon you get across the game. So it doesn't feel like they pulled this team out of nowhere. Beating Red is one of the most satisfying things, because it shows how much progress you've made to the point that you have surpassed yourself from before. And man, this game is just pure genius. It shows what Game Freak is capable of when they put their mind to it. There's just so much creativity packed into this game, and it perfectly builds upon the foundation that Red and Blue established. Gold and Silver is a perfect sequel in every sense of the word, and I honestly miss the first 5 generations of Pokemon because each generation felt like it kept massively improving on the next. But now at this point it just feels kind of stagnant, but honestly, that's a whole thing to get into on another video. So that's gonna be it for now. I hope you guys all enjoyed today's video. If you did, you can check out some of my other content. I've made a ton of other Pokemon related stuff. Anyway, that's gonna be it for now, and I'll see you all in the next one.